Hello and welcome. I'm Jennifer Little-Fleck of the Genomics Company. I do a full breadth and depth of genetic testing, and specifically we have a test that we use called the Precision Panel, as well as other lifestyle panels. And peptides are one of the things that we do test for. And I know you're probably thinking, wow, that's crazy. You can actually test for peptides and whether or not they'll work with my body. And the answer is absolutely yes. And later on in the presentation, we're actually going to walk through what a peptide genomic test looks like. But enough about myself. I also want to give Tony here an opportunity to introduce himself as well. Tony?
Sure, thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, I'm Tony Medrano, CEO of Longevity Plan. We help people optimize peptide therapy and other fitness opportunities depending on their goals. So we've partnered with Jennifer and the Genomics Company, and I had my peptide genomics test run, and I'm going to show that off with Jennifer's expert advice and tell you how accurate it was. It shocked me how it mirrored my personal experiences with the peptides, which I was on before I took the test, which is not optimal. I should have taken the test before, but the proof was in the pudding. It matched. So a little bit of a,
Yep. Well, Tony knows better now. Test first, do next, do later. All right. Thank you, Tony. All right. So your DNA, your peptides, at some point, everyone asks the same questions, which is, why does my friend drink espresso at 10 p.m. and sleep like a baby, while I, on the other hand, have one iced coffee at noon and I lie awake repeating everything that happened from 2009, that conversation. It is why some people feel so great and virtuous on kale, and other people, it's, just the worst thing that ever happened to their intestinal system, right? So we tend to file these things away as personality quirks, but they're really not. They're not personal failings at all. They are biology, and most of it is sitting right there in your DNA in black and white, and we can read this and understand the answers to a lot of these questions. All right, so my whole thing is, you shouldn't have to wait until something goes wrong to get the manual to your own body. We hand people their biology only after they're sick. In our country anyway, in the US. And I feel like that is a bit like reading the car insurance policy from inside the car after you've crashed, right? So knowing how your body actually works, which is, anything from caffeine wiring to stress chemistry to just why you think the way you do, how your mind works. This is genuinely useful information for most people to have. And honestly, it would have made my 20s a lot less confusing, and even my 30s, and definitely in my 50s. So what I do is read code, and I make it make sense for you so that you have an understanding of how your own biology becomes something that you get to look at and learn about for fun and not just for survival. Right, so the cool truth is that your genome is the one input that doesn't change, right? So everything else in a longevity protocol expires at some point, right? Your labs are out of date in 90 days. Your wearable data, that was yesterday, right? You have new data today. And your peptide stack will rotate probably 3 times this year. But your genome, that was finished before you were born. And it is the only longevity input that you get handed to you, and you have it for life. Now on the slide it says you read once, but I've learned that's not true. I even reread my own genome over and over again because new data comes out all the time, and new insights and things that I can apply today that I didn't know last week. So like I said, what gets rerun and what doesn't? Labs every 90 days, wearable every night, supplements and peptides rotated as you change, but your DNA, once sequenced, can be interpreted for a lifetime. So maybe you're like Jennifer, you're talking about the genome and genomics and potentially SNPs. What is all of this? Well, these are words that a lot of people use interchangeably, but they describe different layers of the same thing. And the distinction very much does matter because it tells you what you can actually act on. Now, your genome is all of your DNA, right? That 3 billion base pairs, 99% identical, typically between any two people. Your genomics, however, is the science of how the variation in that 1% changes biology completely from person to person, right? It is the reason personalization is possible because genomics looks at not just one gene or two genes or three genes, but we stack many, many multiple genes and look at how these genes work in a system. So think of, your genome is like looking at a whole department of a company, right? So you kind of, you have metrics on how the whole department works. Yes, you have individual contributors, which are like genes, and each of those genes bring a specific skill like an individual contributor does, but it's putting all of those skills together that really makes the department work really, really well. And so that is genomics. And then we have SNPs, or single nucleotide polymorphisms. That is the single letter difference at very specific spots on a gene in your DNA that is that 1% that varies. And it is also the unit, that we look at when we are interpreting genomics. Now, just to give you an idea of how significant that 1% is, no two people who are non-family members, well, the odds, let me rephrase this way. The odds of two people, non-family members, having the same genetic information is 1 in 14.5 quintillion. And if you are family members, it's still astronomical. It's more like, 10 to the 12th instead of like 10 to the 23rd, but it's still like, it's not going to happen. So 2 things to remember from this. Genes set probabilities, not destinies, okay? And outcomes live in genotype that we look at and interpret, but also your environment. So your environment is responsible for about 40% of why you are the way you are, typically. And then genomics is the other, 60% or so. So 4 conversations that really, rule the longevity conversation, which is lifespan and resilience. So we look at FOXO3 and APOE for that. Methylation and detox, which is typically things like MTHFR and COMT. Oxidative stress, which we look at SOD2, GPX1 and NQO1, and then growth hormone and repair signaling, right? So we'll look at the growth hormone receptor, IGF-1, and collagen 1A1. So how I'm going to explain this today is we're going to talk about 3 different people and 3 very different genes and outcomes and how peptides potentially can help them, especially when you know what their genomics say. So the first one is Marcus. And Marcus, he wants the shot that everybody's been on. He's 46. He's carrying 30 pounds of weight that he cannot shift. And he's watching all his friends melt away on semaglutide. And he's like, hey, I want some of that. I want that. But the thing with Marcus is he has read up. He's a little bit savvy, right? So obviously he's gotten his genomics done. That's one clue that, he's on top of things. But he's not just chasing a number. He wants real metabolic health change, not just for right now, but for decades to come. So the question is not whether to use a GLP-1, it's whether or not his biology will cooperate long-term if this is a good solution for him. So again, he wants to get the weight off, but he wants to do it right? So what was going on with Marcus? His appetite definitely was not a character flaw. What we saw with him was that hunger and fullness largely hardwired into his brain. There's 3 specific genes that shape how well a GLP-1 will work. And so we looked at those and we saw something very profound with Marcus. But first, there's a family history question that everybody should find out the answer to before they use a GLP-1 at all. So let's get to those genes behind the bathroom scale. So for Marcus, he carries a very common set of appetite variants that make weight gain very easy for him. And willpower-based dieting is nearly impossible for him because his brain is literally telling him, that he needs to eat and he needs to eat now, right? And literally this situation is what GLP-1s were made for, right? Very specifically. While they help a wide range of people, this is the type of person that is helped the most. And this is a common, or I should say not uncommon result when we do genomic testing. So first let's look, we looked at the FTO, which is literally named the fat and obesity gene. I didn't name them. Clearly people who do not have an imagination name these genes, but it is called the fat and obesity or appetite and adiposity gene. But the risk allele for this raises hunger levels and BMI, and it starts in early adulthood and it never lets up, right? So along with all those hormone shifts, that start in early adolescence, kind of like turns all these things on. Then we have MC4R, which is the master switch in the hypothalamus for satiety. Okay, so variants like the ones that Marcus has blunt that I'm full signal. And like I said, these are the people for whom GLP-1s and GIP peptides, not dieting, not crazy dieting. That's not the right tool for these people. GLP-1s definitely are made for these people. And then we look at the GLP-1 receptor, TCF7L2, which is an insulin sensitivity receptor, and GCGR. And this is the glucagon arm of the equation. So what should Marcus try? And what question should we ask first? Well, the first thing that we should do is take a look and see if Marcus has the RET variant that leads to a type of thyroid cancer that is turned on by GLP-1s. If it's a simple test and it comes back pretty quickly, and obviously most people are fine, but there are those people occasionally who find out that they are a carrier for this, and so GLP-1s are not a good idea. However, let's talk about peptides that do fit. We're going to start actually at the bottom and work our way up because most people are familiar with semaglutide. It was the first one on the market. It is a proven GLP-1, a solid single mechanism first step, right? And because Marcus has that longevity goal, we're going to pair that typically with something like MOTS-C for the mitochondrial side of things that give him that mitochondrial boost to help with the longevity goal. Now, tirzepatide is also a GLP-1, but it's dual mechanism, right? So it's GIP and GLP, right? So, and at one point, this was also the strongest option available, especially for MC4R-driven appetites. It is approved for use. And then we have retatrutide, which is the triple mechanism GLP that, you likely heard about if you follow the news. It's quite amazing what it's been doing for people. In phase 3 trials, it's shown about an average of 28% weight loss in phase 3, which, as far as clinical trials go, is the strongest evidence yet, right? Technically, it's still an investigational drug. It's not approved yet in the pharma world. maybe in 2027, but obviously it is available as a research chemical, which is typically how they're prescribed at this point. Now, a couple of things to know about retatrutide is that the glucagon arm of this, that third mechanism, can cause some slight skin tingling, otherwise known as dysesthesia. And tirzepatide's GIP variant can raise the incidence of nausea. So titrate those slowly. Expectations for somebody like Marcus, what's going to matter most is Marcus measuring against his baseline, not against how his friends are doing on it. Because, typically people who have these gene variants that we talked about on the previous slide, it's rough for them. It's a rough transition because we are literally overcoming massive brain signals. So for him, it's definitely going to be start low, go slow, and keep track of how he feels, his satiety levels. Like for him, that's going to be the big thing to understand whether or not it's working. So Diane, she got her genome done, and unfortunately, she got some news that she didn't really care for, which is kind of in sync with what she's been observing in her life, which is that she's 54, but she feels closer to 70. Her words. I know a lot of really sprightly 70-year-olds, so I'll just put that out there. But she bruises easily. She pulls a muscle, and it takes forever for her to heal and come back from. I feel that. I definitely feel that. Her skin has lost its bounce a decade earlier than a lot of her friends, right? And when her genome was sequenced, we found two big issues for her, which is her mitochondrial defense system and her collagen levels. And so for once, she feels like she has an explanation to what's going on. And let me tell you, people underestimate the value of an explanation for how their body's been behaving, or more often than not, misbehaving over the course of their entire lifetime, right? And that's actually what makes peptides so much more useful, because we can really target what it is that is not working. So what her genome said was that she has mitochondria that run really hot and clear damage slowly. Collagen, hers built is just programmed to remodel very slowly. So it's not keeping up with damage. Damage is accumulating, and that damage shows up as wrinkles. A repair system that needs help, not just rest, right? So she can get all the sleep in the world, but it's not going to ultimately do for her what it does for other people, because her repair system needs help. So why Diane ages in fast forward? So specifically her SOD2 and her GPX variants, these two genes work hand in hand to clear toxins from the body. So, oops, missing a slide. Oh, well. So I want you to think right now about a fireplace. And this fireplace, you put wood in it and you burn it, and you get energy in the form of heat, right? It warms you up and it's good. Fire is wonderful. Fire transformed man, from like simple cavemen to on the path to civilization, right? But fire has a side effect, which is smoke. It always produces smoke. So similarly, your mitochondria, they are the energy creators of the body. However, as a byproduct of all of that energy creation, it produces smoke in the form of reactive oxygen species. So the body developed this really cool system with SOD2 and GPX1 of clearing those reactive oxygen species, or venting the smoke, if you will. SOD2 takes all those reactive oxygen species and turns it into hydrogen peroxide, okay? And then GPX comes in and breaks up this hydrogen peroxide into water and oxygen. So you pee out the water and you breathe out the oxygen. And that's a large part of how we deal with toxins in the body, toxins and waste. So unfortunately, Diane's she has both of the weaker forms of these genes, the suboptimal versions. So not only is her body really slow at converting those ROSs into hydrogen peroxide, but then it's slow also converting the hydrogen peroxide into oxygen and water. On top of that, her collagen gene, she has an altered structure, which means that she slowly remodels the skin and the bone and tendons, right? So overall, Diane's just a slow healer on top of that. So for her, we would look at things like going from the bottom up, GHKCU plus BPC 157 and TB 500, right? So this is going to address her collagen issues, skin, connective tissue, and that repair support that she needs. And then we have MOTS-C and humanin and SS31. Mitochondrial-derived peptides, MOTS-C, first line given her high reactive oxygen species profile, okay? SS31 is another peptide that stabilizes the inner membrane of the mitochondria that produces all the energy, right? So she can keep going and going and going, and she's, going to be able to clear out, the ROS faster. But in order for these peptides to work optimally, she also needs to make sure that she's supplying her body with the right nutrients, or what we call substrates, right? So that's going to be, eating the building blocks of collagen, right? So getting, that from your meat and animal products. Vitamin C, critical. Critical, critical, critical. You cannot form new collagen without vitamin C. And then glycine, because glycine helps to, again, create some of that new connective tissue. One of the things that I want to call attention to is some of these peptides do increase IGF-1. And if you are someone who has had a hormone-sensitive cancer history, typically IGF-1 elevation is contraindicated. So maybe talk to your doctor about that, but typically that's not something that we're going to recommend. And then finally, we have Sam. He has tried 3 antidepressants and none of them have worked. And he's been labeled, frankly, treatment resistant. I know a lot of people like this. And, typically when you go and have a consult, with someone about anxiety, depression, in the past, these poor physicians that are trying to help these people, they are literally throwing darts in the dark because they have no idea whether or not you're going to respond to this class of drugs or this class of drugs or this class of drugs, or even if, serotonin is your problem, right? But with genomic testing, we can help with giving them that information so we can start to narrow down what it is to try first or second or third and what to avoid completely, because it's probably going to be a waste of time. So for Sam, he has a low mood, flat motivation. Medications really just don't touch this. He's had months and months lost to trial and error approaches, like I just mentioned. And he's really starting to get down on himself, like nothing's ever going to work. So the genes that we're suggesting to look at for this are folate and methylation. Cannot keep neurotransmitters stopped if you don't have appropriate folate and methylation pathways. That is a huge, huge thing that we talk about and we look at first. We look at his dopamine and serotonin handling, and we found that it was tuned against SSRIs, okay? So they're not going to be a good first choice for him. And then low neuroplasticity signaling to begin with. So this is why standard antidepressants kept missing the goal for him, right? Because the factory of the methyl group factory was undersupplied, right? So you can keep prescribing SSRIs, but if the raw materials for neurotransmitter synthesis and plasticity are just not available, your response is never going to be great, right? So what Sam needs is the upstream pathways supported first, right? Before anything else, before the SSRIs or even before peptides, right? So what do we look at? We look at MTHFR, and we saw that specifically he was basically at about 30% efficacy, okay? When we look at methylation, we look actually at about 9 different genes here, and MTHFR is one of them, and it is one of the more important ones that we look at, and it's highly, highly identified in literature as causing all kinds of issues, right? So in pregnancy, we know that folate deficiency for the baby results in neural tube defects, right? So it's hugely, hugely important, you know, throughout your whole life as well. And we, like I said, saw that he runs at about 30% capacity. COMT is, for him, he is a fast clearer with respect to COMT. So that means that he clears his neurotransmitters very, very quickly. Like, they don't last long. So if he makes dopamine, it's cleared up pretty fast, right? Which for some people, you know, that is a blessing, because that means that he's ready for the next round. He's not accumulating neurotransmitters, right? So for him, however, it is kind of works in his favor, especially, you know, for antidepressant response. Now, 5-HTT-LPR and BDNF, he had unfortunately suboptimal versions of these, right? So the short allele for 5-HTT-LPR predicts slower, weaker SSRI response. And then suboptimal BDNF means that he has low baseline plasticity, which means it just takes him a little longer to process these neurotransmitter changes, okay? So we feed the pathways, we don't force them. So things that work for him are going to be things like taking L-methylfolate, because he's not going to be able to produce a viable amount, right? He needs support with that. It bypasses that MTHFR bottleneck. Cmax and C-link are peptides that work in the brain. Specifically, they raise BDNF and they modulate dopamine and serotonin responses. They are considered a nootropic, you know, and are mood supportive. Now, COMT really matters here when you're taking any of these, because COMT determines how long things hang around. And so for him, he's going to have to keep in mind that he has a fast COMT. And, you know, typically, you know, they're going to tolerate more. So they can err on the side of more peptide support. Whereas if you're slow COMT, you have to be a little more gentle, lower and slower doses to begin. Also, please, depression definitely needs to be managed by a clinician, so it does not ever replace, these peptides don't replace treatment. All right, so I'm going to pause here for a second, actually, and switch gears a second. And I'm going to share with you Tony's peptide report and have him speak a little bit to what he alluded to earlier. 1 second here. Sorry, I lost my window.
I can tee it up a little bit.
Yeah, go for it, Tony.
So I started peptide therapy on April 1st. We're talking around dates, and used Longevity Plan's digital twin to track which peptides I was on, my doses, and then I took my genomics test about a month ago. So those are the dates we're talking about. I had about 3 months worth of data on my results before the results of the genomic test. And I lost, from April 1st till now, 40 pounds. I was on about 10 peptides, not the whole time since April 1st, but I cycled through and switched off because I felt it important to try different peptides on myself before recommending them, and to see what they did, side effects, all that sort of thing. Found the experience pleasant and really beneficial. I lost the 40 pounds, and I'm a stocky athlete, 55 years old with multiple injuries. So I had a lot of things to look at, not just weight loss, and a lot of peptides and their claims to try. Some of them worked, some of them didn't, and at least in my opinion, right? And some of them are hard to tell. There are some peptides that don't give results like retatrutide, where you can tell by weight loss, or maybe BPC 157, where you can tell if your injury heals, or GHK-Cu, like Jennifer talked about. You can tell really that your skin and hair is improving. So we won't talk too much about the hard to determine, let's say, brain health type of peptides, but more on the ones with, I'd say, obvious effects that I can say I noticed those and tracked those before the genomics test.
Right. So what you're looking at here is just a results summary of how he would typically find benefit or not with particular peptides. So what we take a look at is obviously, moderate benefit with these, and optimal. But what's great about this report is we know that peptides do multiple things in the body, right? It's not just, for just this. And so what's nice is we take a look at, for example, the AOD 9604, like maybe a neutral benefit from macronutrient response, but for weight maintenance, he'll get a strong benefit. So let's take a look at some of the more specific ones. So for fat loss and body composition, right? So do you want to speak to these, Tony, as I kind of scroll through?
Sure. I started AOD probably a couple weeks into my retatrutide in, say, mid-April. I'm not looking at my protocol calendar right now, but that was the period of my greatest weight loss. And I attributed most of that to retatrutide because it is more aggressive and the trials are pretty specific. But AOD was in there, and it has had more of an effect during that time than when I cycled off of it, which was more recently. Now there could be a plateau based on it's harder for me to lose weight now. I'm down to less than 11% body fat. I was at 22 before.
I'm trying to find. There we go. Yeah. So, like I said, for him, definitely he saw that strong benefit with retatrutide. But what was, I think, more interesting was his response in terms of switching back and forth and trying a couple of different things and really seeing like what was working with him and what wasn't.
And for retatrutide, I escalated my dosing in accordance with the clinical, plans, the clinical studies, which are more on obese folks with a lot of weight loss needs and some diabetic symptoms as well. I got side effects at the higher doses, just like retatrutide talks about. And I know those were because of retatrutide, the skin tingling, some, say, gastric tension, as well as some, say, malaise related to it, only at the higher doses. And I didn't really need to be at the higher doses, but I wanted to test those out anyway, and quickly cycled off of them to not have the skin tingling and other types of things.
So let's just like check out a couple of different other reports here. So I can't remember, have you tried out the CMAX?
Yeah, the CMAX, I can really tell. That gives me, I literally do CMAX before podcasts because it makes me sharper. It makes the words come out better. I know you're not supposed to be on it, long term, so I try to cycle opportunistically, and I can feel it. Solank, it's kind of partnered with, but there's more of an anxiety focused. I didn't notice a benefit there, but I don't feel like I struggle with anxiety. But I always feel like my words could be better, especially on podcasts, because I probably do 4 or 5 of those a week. And they're interviews where they throw questions at you, so it pays to be alert.
And I think last time we talked, you had not tried cerebrolysin yet?
I have not, no.
Okay. But dihexa you did, right?
I am. I'm trying dihexa right now. It's hard to tell the benefit for it. I can't feel sharper. It's supposed to repair, damaged neurons, which could be from just me getting older. I don't have any traumatic injury or other, history of drug use or anything, but it's supposed to help with.
Yeah, because in my experience, like it mentions here, like this is definitely something, it's almost preventive in nature.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's not why you're seeing something. It'd
be great not to lose my memory. I mean, I think I'm 55,
I know, right?
sharp still, so yeah, maybe it's helping.
Okay. So you did try FOXO4, that's correct, right?
I did. I did that for a hard weekend cycle because that was recommended by some practitioners that I respect. And I felt it. I noticed weight loss that I think it was attributed to that based on what the practitioner said, because it clears out your zombie cells. That's what FOXO4 does. It's made as like a cleansing peptide for tactical use only, not for regular use at all. Like once or twice a year, a hard cycle of, larger doses for a couple of days in a row is the protocol that I tried.
Okay.
And I believe it. It's hard to track though. If the benefits are there or they're attributable to the other peptides.
Right.
But I did feel a change that weekend, and it was all positive. I had no negative side effects.
Okay. Well, and I've noticed that too with like oral formulations that target senescent cells. They're like, it's a pretty huge dose and it's like once a quarter. So
yeah, it makes sense.
Again, more of a preventive kind of thing. How about Epitalon?
Epitalon I am trying now, like a 30-day protocol of a medium dose, and then again only like once or twice a year. I like the benefits and what it says. Hard to attribute things to that, but it was extremely well regarded in the literature and by practitioners that I trusted. So I'm going to continue the 30-day cycle.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about one of your favorites.
Yeah, this is. I'm not a consumer of many beauty products, but this worked for me. I mean, my hair got thicker, my skin got softer, more supple. I felt I looked younger. My skin was repairing itself quicker. I could feel the difference throughout my body. It was amazing. And this is also one that can be used for a long time without having to cycle off, because I don't even think they know which receptors it hits, because it's so spread throughout the body, the effects.
Right.
And it's in a lot of women's skin cream, but injecting it was more powerful.
Yeah, I was going to say it's used topically a lot,
Yeah.
but you definitely prefer the injectable route.
The injector was systemic, right? It helped my whole body, and I have a lot of scratches and hair or whatever skin, so I figured that would be best. But also, I just got some spray, some new GHKU spray, and the literature on men's hair regrowth was so strong. It was like 2 or 3 times more powerful than Rogaine, and I've been a Rogaine user for 10 years.
Right.
My hair is pretty good.
Yeah.
I used to have a little bald spot. Rogaine helped it, but the literature was so good on GHKCU spray and men's hair loss that I was like, okay, I'm going to try it, even though I don't really need it. I'm going to just see if it grows quicker.
Are you microneedling with that or no?
I'm not. That was a little too much for me because I don't, this is like an extra test benefit. But I have some friends that are more in need of the results for hair. But I just wanted to, see if I could confirm with extra.
Yeah. Well, us women, we're used to torturing ourselves a little more often, and for the sake of beauty. So yeah,
well,
I'm no stranger to that.
I did get one of those. This is a question, maybe. I did get one of those rollers because of my 40 pounds of loss, and I'm training for athletic events. I have some skin sagging around my midsection, so I got a roller for that. It looks like a torture device, but it doesn't hurt so bad. I should probably try some GHKCU on my stomach, right?
Yeah, you could. There's also like other things that you can use, like Sculptra, that can help with that. But
okay.
But yeah, that's a whole other conversation. We're talking about peptides today.
Yeah.
All right. Melanotan 2.
Yeah. Melanotan I initially made fun of because I don't need to be more tan and it's kind of a little superficial, but not going out into the sun.
I know where you're going. Yeah.
And it worked. It made me feel good, look good. It has some appetite suppression and some like positive sexual side effects.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I just wanted to see if it worked, and it felt great. And I continue to use it once in a while when I prefer not to go out in the sun, but maybe need to look tan for
Gotcha.
Whatever.
Yeah, I tried it, and unfortunately, it does not agree with my system. I was super nauseous on it, so I did not try that for too long. But yeah, all right.
Jennifer, can I ask a question? This is Stephanie.
Hey, Stephanie.
I tried Melanotan. I loved it. Super jealous. I can't take it. And I broke out I didn't break out. I got these really, really dark spots. But do you think that those dark spots would, if I just stayed on the Melanotan, do you think they would have evened out over time? Or do you think I would have ended up with dark, dark, dark spots all over my body?
Well, I think that it does make whatever is there darker. I experienced the same thing, and that was like one of my concerns when I was trying it out, to be quite honest with you, was, because I have a whole bunch of melasma like on my face, and I'm, I'm covered in freckles, which you can't tell on camera, but yeah, my husband, he can't believe how many more freckles I get every year, and everything got darker. Everything.
What happened to me, so I have all this dark spots, but then I got really, really dark ones here, and my dentist went, oh my goodness, what's going on? But so I got off the Melanotan, which I really love, and they did fade, so that was my experience.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that, because like I don't know a lot of women who have tried as many peptides as I have, and I never know, but I felt bad because like I can't really super speak to it other than a couple of weeks because it made me so sick. Yeah.
Did not get sick, but I'm really bummed about the dark spots.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like you wish that you would have found this like before, sun damage, like in high school, I would have been all over this before I had any.
I know, because I'm so white. I'm almost blue at times in the winter because all my veins show through my skin. And this is like so easy. You can wear shorts whenever you want.
I know. I'm with
Yeah.
you. We're Irish descent. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Real jealous. I really want to continue, but I can't.
Yeah. I mean, unless you get it all lasered off, which I don't know.
Well, yeah, and then I started at my full panic mode. I was thinking that CO2 fractional laser, which can totally damage your skin, but research. And then I was thinking pico laser, but it has subsided to where now I'm okay with just the remaining two super dark spots. I'm putting niacinamide.
Yeah.
Something on there. So
Okay. All right. Well, I did do the CO2 laser, and that was amazing.
And painful?
No, not nearly as painful as some of the other things that I've done to myself in the name of skin health.
Okay.
I mean, it was not bad, and I could not believe the healing time was only 7 days, and I literally looked like I had new skin, like a baby. It was awesome. Highly recommend.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, back to our peptide discussion. What else should I pull up, Tony?
The growth hormone peptides. I think that's a good category, and I think oftentimes the name scares people. They think it's like a bodybuilder thing, but it's not. It's mostly youth regeneration, right? And I had great success there. I think it's hard, it's overlapping with GHKCU.
Right.
And there are visceral fat loss that overlaps with retatrutide. But I had absolutely no negative side effects. And the CJC 1295, I started at the beginning, and that fits really well with what my weight loss was at the beginning and my overall skin. And it's hard to know if I'm remodeled bones, but I'm not weaker. I'm a lot stronger, and I lost 40 pounds.
Well, that's amazing, yeah, I understand what you're saying about the growth hormone stuff, because
the name's terrible.
It is. It really is, and it does scare people, especially who've had a history of cancer. You have to be real careful again, like with that. But for the right people, it makes a huge difference. I will call out BPC 157. I think a lot of people think that it does benefit everyone, and it does not. There are people who do not see a benefit from this, and moreover, I have met a few people who can't take it because of reactions, like allergic reactions to it. Yeah, it's really interesting. So I just want to put that out there, because I think, again, having this information ahead of time is definitely, preferential. I mean,
the BPC 157 and TB 500, I started taking right at the beginning on April 1st, because I had a 30-year torn meniscus in my left knee from back when I was in the military. It's been a nagging injury, nothing major, but it appeared to heal that right up in 2 weeks. I was mixing sort of local injections with just, belly systemic injections, because they're really not sure if it benefits that much to give you an injection in the knee. But no side effects and unbelievable recovery. I mean, that's 30 years straight that it's been nagging on me, and it's better. That's interesting. Some twitching with beep. I didn't see the rest of that note. Let me see what you said there, Electra.
What did Electra say? I'm sorry. I don't have to chat up.
My husband has always had some twitches, usually when he eats way too much sugar. But when he started the Wolverine stack, BPC 157 and TB 500, they came back worse than ever. It could be coincidence, but we stopped anyway, just in case. Yeah. It did help his knee, and he was on it. Huh, interesting. He was on a low dose. Does this happen to anyone? Not me. Retatrutide did make my skin tingle in an annoying way for a couple weeks in a row. That was at the higher doses.
Okay.
But I haven't heard anything like that with BPC 157.
Okay. All right. Well, we are about coming up on the hour, and this was only supposed to be 30 minutes. So thanks everyone for hanging in there. If there's any other questions, please, feel free to reach out to myself, Tony, as far as peptides. If you want more information on Tony's peptides and his programs, Tony, where can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Tony Medrano, or on LongevityPlan.AI. And we do sell almost all the peptides there, 50% off first order. So if anybody wants some, feel free to order up.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I can be found at thegenomicscompany.com. And you can see our genomic testing packages there, or you can schedule a call with me and we can talk through what it is that you're thinking about.